we share the deck and everything there. So thanks everyone for joining today's session. I know it's gonna be the last session of a year for us. Maybe we can start by introducing ourselves. My name is Pato Sapir. I'm a Salesforce MVP and currently a solutions consultant with Devs United team here based in Cleveland, Ohio, but I'm originally from Argentina, as I was saying, world champions. So, I don't know, Tom.
Hi everyone, it's great to see everyone here. Tom Clyde, partner with Pato here on the Salesforce Cleveland Community Group. Former co-worker of his as well when we were at Precision Dialogue together, a local marketing agency here in Cleveland, Ohio. So yeah, continue to just learn and grow, with him and others, in the Salesforce ecosystem. So eager and excited to continue our journey here today around Data Cloud.
Awesome. So I wanted to kind of like first say a big thank you to everyone who has been part of this Trailblazer community group. We relaunched this group, I think back in May, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, right. May, was it May?
Mm-hmm.
And we had 5 events since our launch, since our relaunch in May. So I really appreciate everyone who showed up, who came to our in-person events, also people who volunteered to present, Julie, Adam, everyone who volunteered to present. Really appreciate. Hope to keep this going next year. Hope to be able to do a couple more in-person events or hybrid events. So yeah, just wanted to show appreciation for this community group. So today's our part number 3 of Data Cloud for Marketers series. Just so you know, you are able to watch part 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in my YouTube channel. I've been uploading the recordings to these sessions. So if you want, you can go ahead and scan this QR code later when you see the recording later. You can go back and scan it, but you'll find all the recordings there. And if you're part of our group or as part of our Slack community, I'll also share the recording there as well as a PDF for this presentation. So the series is separated in 4 parts. Part 1, Adam introduces us to Data Cloud and some basic concepts of Data Cloud. In part 2, we really did a deep dive on data ingestion and data modeling. So ingesting data, we did, I think, from CRM and from AWS or S3 storage. We ingested data from there and we mapped it to the data model objects, and we talk about harmonizing and identity resolution. And today we're going to talk about segmentation activation, and the last session, maybe last because I feel like we could have more, is going to talk about, we're going to have a presenter from Salesforce to talk about some advanced features that are upcoming in Data Cloud. So we're coordinating that presentation maybe in January. We'll have to see with Tom when we can do it, but it's coming. Today's session, we're going to do a quick overview of part 2. We're going to talk about how to create segments and activate them, and creating activation targets and how to activate them, and then we'll have a little of time of Q&A. I don't think we'll need the full hour for this session, but I don't know. Who knows? Based on the few questions and based on the internet connection and whatnot, we might need the full hour. So a little of part 2 overview. So again, Data Cloud, as you know by now, since you've been in part 1 and part 2, is the platform that allows us to connect data from multiple data sources, where that's using batch file storage methods or real-time APIs. And more importantly, we can harmonize that data and create, map it with a standard model, which these are the data model objects, right? So once we have that data mapped in the data model objects, now we can, gain insights about the data that we have. We can create segments. We can use AI to get some predictions about what are the data that we have is telling us. And then we can create activations. We can activate where that's activating back into Sales Cloud with data actions, or sending data to AWS. We can send data to Marketing Cloud, and we can send data to other tools like Google or Meta or whatnot. So in part two, if we look at a typical implementation of Data Cloud, we kind of focus on the first three steps. And I will say, like, this session is going to be probably the easier one, because the reality is that if you conducted proper discovery during your project, and discovery could be another good session, how to conduct proper discovery for Data Cloud projects. That could be another good session we could cover, Tom, perhaps. But basically, in my opinion, like, discovery should be like a huge percentage of your project. And then once you went through discovery, you're going to start connecting and ingesting the raw data. You're going to map that data with your data model objects, and then you're going to work with identity resolution. And I feel strongly that once you did all that work and you validated that the data you have in Data Cloud is accurate, then the rest is a lot easier. And you're going to see what I mean when we look at our demos here. So this session is gonna be kind of like the easiest one, at least for me. Because again, like the most complicated part was the first part. So basically, like I said, we connected and ingested data, we mapped everything into data model objects, and then we end up with unified profiles, and now we can create and activate segments. So if we zoom in to this create and activation segmentation steps, we have three steps that we have to do to create a segment and activate it. The first, obviously, is create our segment. So creating a segment entails, filtering our entities and their related attributes based on a specific criteria that we have for that segment. Number two is where we're going to send data to. That's called the activation target. So basically, we have to set up our activation target. So we can send our data to Marketing Cloud, for example. And when setting up the activation target means putting, which business unit we're gonna send this data to, for example, in our Marketing Cloud activation target. And the last piece, once we have the activation target, the last piece is kind of like combining, saying, okay, now I have the segment and I have the activation target. Now I can publish a segment to that activation. So now I create the activation and I can, marry those two together. We'll see a little more detail in the demo here. So let's talk about segments real quick. So a segment, how a segment becomes a segment, I was thinking about this kind of like how a bill becomes a law type thing. So I put that little guy, the bill. But it's kind of like that. The first thing that you do is that you have to choose, when you create a segment, the segment on entity. So basically, when you create a segment, you have to tell the segment against which entity you're going to be segmenting. So you can segment against a unified individual, and that's the unified individual is an entity that is a result of going through identity resolution, right? So when we create identity resolution rules and whatnot, like we saw in part two, we end up with an entity called unified individual. But you can also segment on the regular individual data model object. Maybe you map your customers from e-commerce, your contacts from CRM. You didn't do identity resolution because maybe you don't need it. You can segment on the individual. Now that's dangerous again because you could have duplicate records on the individual data model object, but there are use cases where you could do that. And you can create segments on the account as well. If you have an account structure, you could create segments on the account entity as well. So when you create a segment, you choose what you're gonna segment on, and then you choose any direct attributes that relate to that entity. So for example, if I'm bringing data from product registrations, and that has a product that I was registered, and I map that as an attribute at the individual level, I'm gonna have that attribute available in my segment. That's a direct attribute. Okay, if it exists in the entity, it's gonna be direct. But then, if you remember, we have these entities in the data model object that relate to each other, right? So, for example, one person can have multiple orders. So, if I did my mapping correctly during the mapping the data streams with the data model objects, I'm gonna be able to pull to segment also the orders of individuals that made the order. So, a segment is basically choosing what you're going to segment on and choose the direct attributes and then any related attributes based on the segment on entity. You can add up to 50 attributes per tab in your filter criteria for excluding or including people in your segment. You have to choose a publication schedule. So you have to choose how often you're going to publish this segment. And I'm going to show you that in a little bit. And the minimum is hourly. You can create nested segments, which is kind of nice. And then you can use calculate insights in your segments. Calculate insights is something that we didn't see on these sessions and we should probably look at. But calculate insights is a way of kind of like creating attributes for your for your entities that you may not have when you're bringing data in. So the classic example that you always hear is average order value, for example, or lifetime spend, or an RFM model. You can use calculated insights to calculate that data in your entities and put in an attribute. And you can use those calculated insights in your segments, which is great. So for example, let's say that you calculate the loyalty tier of a person based on different things that they're doing, like how many purchases they have and how much money they're spending. And you want to calculate that. So you can have a calculated insights that calculates what tier of loyalty they're in. And then you can create a segment that says, okay, I want to segment all the people who are gold level of membership. And that's your calculating insight. So it's kind of nice. And then the other thing that you'll use a lot in the segments is Data Explorer. And in the Data Explorer, you can actually use it to validate if your person has been added to a segment or not. If a particular individual has been added to a segment or not. And I can show you that in a minute how to use that. But instead of me continue talking about how a segment becomes a segment and whatnot, it's easier if I just show you. So let's go ahead. So I have my Data Cloud demo instance here. This is an instance that we use to play around, and it's not perfect organized and whatnot. It's more like an instance that we use to organize and whatnot, but it works. So the first thing I want to show you is our data model. So the segment that I want to show you, so I'm going to go into data model here, and I'm going to go into view graph. The segment that I want to show you is basically I want to create a segment of customers with purchases, okay, and their products. So if we go here to unify individual, let me see if I can. I'm looking for Okay, so sales order. So there you go. So this is a relationship I'm looking at, right? So an individual can have multiple sales order associated to them that they could have bought in a specific store. If you have that map in, and then there is a relationship between sales order and sales order product, and this is basically like an individual can make a sales order. This is our kind of like, if you think about it, is our order header, and then the line items of how which product belongs to which order are stored in this relationship, in this entity, sales order product. And then we have the goods products that basically show us all the products available. Okay, so that's a filter that we're gonna create. I wanna filter. I wanna get a list of individuals that bought a product based on a particular category, for example. Okay. In our data mapping, let's go a little bit reviewing let's review a little bit of part two. When we ingested, we didn't do this during part two, but I did it at some other time. We ingested products from Amazon S3, okay? And we can look at the mapping, and I ingested the products and I mapped them to the goods product entity, data model object, okay? So as you can see, I mapped the product name. The product name, I map it with like the product name. I map the SKU of a product with the good products ID. So very important couple of things, and I think I mentioned this on part two. It's very important to have some familiarity with the data model objects, with the data model objects I model, because you need to understand like that you need to map to an entity called goods product all your products, right? And if you don't have a good understanding of all those entities, and what they're meant to do, it's gonna be kind of harder to do this mapping process. So I think in part two, I kind of send you, a link with all the data model entities in the documentation for Salesforce. Very important to be familiar with that. So I did all the mapping here for my good products, and basically one of the things that I also did that I'm going to show you is enable value suggestion. Okay, so when you're doing the mapping, I have in all the products that I import, I have the product category of my products, and clicking this checkbox, enable value suggestion, is going to make Data Cloud collect the unique values for this product category. So I have biking, hiking, camping, etc. And it's gonna allow me to use that on my filters. And I'm gonna show you when I create on my segment. Sorry, I'm gonna show you when I create a segment. But very important when you're doing the mapping, if you know that you're gonna use some of these categorizations for segments, to enable value suggestion. Okay. So another example could be country. Let's say that we have orders and we have country of the order was made. You may want to click the checkbox when you're doing your mapping, enable value suggestion. So if we go into Data Explorer, so we map this to our data model entities. If we go to Data Explorer, we can see that we can look at some data. So for example, I'm gonna explore the data lake object, and I'm gonna explore the object that I mapped, and the data stream that I imported from Amazon S3. And this is a good way to verify what was imported. So here, for example, I can see the product name, the related activities, the product category, the SKU number, the unit price. So I can kind of verify. You see, these are all my products. Okay. Like I said, then I went ahead and mapped my order header, right? My orders headers, I mapped it with sales order. So if we go to code mapping, we'll see that I map customer number with the sold to customer. I map the total amount. I map the status. I map the order number with sales order ID. And then I have a field said loyalty points accrued. This was a field that I didn't have in my in my data model, but you can create custom fields. So I added a custom field here. Okay. But again, like you'll see, for example, let me show you one more. Sales order line items, right? So the sales order line items, you had to map it with the sales order product. That's the entity that combines the good products with the order header, right? Sales order products. Okay. So I map my loyalty points, my order number with the sales order, and then the sales order product has a primary key. Okay, so remember, the sales order product is kind of like the details of an order, right? So the primary key in this case, I had to create like a formula field for my primary key. Let me actually see if I can show you formula field. So I had to create a formula field because I didn't have a field in my data stream to uniquely identify each line item. So what I did is I created a formula field that concatenates the order number with the SKU, okay, of a product. And that way I was able to map. So again, very important, as you can see, to have all this mapping exercise done correctly for us to do something very simple that I'm going to show you, which is creating a segment. So once I create a segment, I go to segments. I'm going to click new segments. And see, as I was saying, you're going to have to choose a segment on. What are you going to segment on for this segment? So I have several options, okay? So what I'm going to choose is unify individual because I want to segment on my individuals that are completely unified, okay? And I'm going to name this segment customers that bought camping here, okay? So we have two different types of publish type. When you are also ingesting data into Data Cloud, you can bring engagement data. Also, when you are connecting, for example, Salesforce Marketing Cloud is going to bring engagement data. That's like clicks, opens, orders they made, for example, can be an engagement data source. So you can basically choose two ways of publishing. One is called Rapid, which is basically, it's going to allow you to access up to 7 days of engagement data in your segmentation rules. So you'll be able to do a segment that says, give me all the customers who purchased 5 days ago, for example. And you'll be able to do that in your segment. Or standard publish, which is it will look up as of 2 years of data. So you could do something like, give me all the customers about last year's. So I'm gonna do rapid publish because it actually takes less to generate the segment counts and to publish it. So I'm gonna do rapid, okay? And then you choose the publish schedule. So how often you want to refresh the schedule? The option is don't refresh, 1 hour, or every 4 hours. That's your option. So I'm gonna choose not refresh, which means I'm gonna want to manually publish this segment. Okay. So I click save. And now I go into a filter screen, which is a really nice filtering mechanism. So the first thing that shows me is how many people are in my population right now on my unified individual. Okay. And now I'm gonna say, okay, give me all the people, for example, who birth date, okay, is this month. Anyone who has a birthday in December. So I'm gonna refresh. And then rather quickly, I hope. So I don't have any customer, for example, that have birthdays this month. Let's see if we can find any customers that have birthdays in November, maybe. Maybe we don't have anything. It's possible. Okay, 4,000 customers that have birthday in November. Okay. So as you can see, as I'm doing my filter, I can get a count of my population, which is kind of nice. Okay. But now, so these are the direct attributes. See, these are the direct attributes of my unified individual. Okay. So person name, created day, all the attributes that I have mapped. But now I want to say customers about camping gear, right? So I'm going to go to related attributes for that individual. This is all based on my mappings. Okay. And I'm going to go to the sales orders because I want to see customers that bought something. Okay. And I'm going to go to the sales order product. So I'm kind of like drilling into the relationships, and I'm gonna say good products. Okay, so this is like the actual products, and I have a primary product category here. Okay, so when I drag it, I'm gonna say, okay, give me at least one order. So here's another thing I can say: give me the total orders, give me the average, give me at the maximum 5 orders per customers. I can do many things in this operator. But I'm gonna say give me at least one order where the primary product category, and see how this actually auto completes all the categories. This is a checkbox I was talking about, the enable value suggestion. Okay, so I'm gonna choose camping. I'm gonna click done, and then I'm gonna refresh my recount. Hopefully we have people. I don't know. If not, we can try something else. But I think we have to. We must. Takes a little bit to refresh. 101 people that bought camping. Okay, I can do other things. I can say, okay, from those, I only want anyone where in their sales order, the from their sales order, the total amount of the order, okay, is greater than $50. So anyone who spent more than $50 in camping gear, okay. We'll see. I don't know if we're gonna. Now I'm playing with fire because I don't know if we're gonna get anything or not, but maybe we have a few. Maybe we don't. And I can't promise you this one. Come on. 95. Okay, good. So now all I have to do is save. I'm done with my segment. And then as you can see, this segment is not published. Okay. If I publish this segment, the only thing that's gonna do is kind of like refreshing the filter. That's all it does. There's nothing else. Unless I have activations associated to it. So that's where activations come into play. Let's look at activations now. So to create an activation is very simple. The first thing we need is an activation target. Okay, so we have to configure our activation target. Then we create the activation for the segment. We configure the activation membership, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We choose the contact points. And then we choose any attributes that we want to include in the activation. So the activation is basically making that the data in the segment. The segment is kind of like our audience, okay? And the activation is sending that audience plus any attributes that I want to choose, any additional attributes that I want to choose to the destination, okay? So that's a good way to put it. It's like the segment is the audience, the activation is sending that audience plus any attributes that I want to that destination. What destination? Well, out of the box, we have a file storage destination. We can send segments to Marketing Cloud. We can send segments to Sales Cloud. Sorry, I don't know why I put Data Cloud. So we have a lot of a few options natively. And then we have partners in the App Exchange. So I could send my data about segments to Google Ads, to Meta, to the Trade Desk, to LiveRamp, and many more. There's a lot of partners in the App Exchange that already have their activation integrations. So let's take a look how that is. So I'm gonna do one activation, but I have another one created because it takes a little bit to end, right, in the activation target. But the first thing is like activation targets, okay? So the activation target, basically, if I click on new, I'm gonna be able to create an activation target. Now, the activation targets come from if you have it set up correctly. So if you go to Data Cloud setup, for example, I set up the Marketing Cloud credentials and activation. That's why it shows up as an activation target. Okay. I believe I had to do something similar for you can do have to do something similar for Google Cloud. For external activation platforms, you have to kind of like enable them and whatnot. Or configure them. So the activation targets that are gonna show up here in these ones are gonna be those who are configuring the setup previously. Okay. But say, for example, I want to create an activation target for Marketing Cloud, and I'm going to say activation. Then I can choose here which business units, based on what I configure in the setup, I can choose which business units I'm going to allow to activate. So the activation target is just saying where the information is going to go, and that's it. I'm not doing anything else. Okay, it's rather simple. So I already have configured here that the training view. Can you hear me, Tom? You can hear me okay, right, Tom?
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay,
just
someone
fine.
said, okay. Someone put in the chat that they couldn't hear, so I don't know. Okay, cool. So activation targets. So I have the business unit in Marketing Cloud here in my Marketing Cloud account. Let me log in real quick. That is called training. Okay. Right here. So I have a business unit here that is already set up as an activation target. Okay. Training. Like that. I have it here. So that's one step, and the second step is activate the segment. So if I go to segment, I can go here in this segment. I can do it in two sides, in two places. I can do it in the segment screen, or I can do it in the activation screen here. I can also create a new activation, but I like to do it from the segment screen. It's a little bit nicer. So I'm gonna go into new activation. I'm gonna choose where you're gonna activate. See, I have a few options here. For example, training view. As you see, basically the membership is I did this segment on Unify Individual, so I'm gonna basically be able to have available all the fields and relationships from Unify Individual for my activation. And then I have to choose what are gonna be my contact points that I'm gonna use for the activation. What does it mean? So Marketing Cloud is obviously an omni-channel platform, right? And it's gonna allow me to choose either email or SMS channels that I can activate. Okay. But as you know, like if I'm activating email for one person, I can have two email addresses sent to Marketing Cloud. Okay. So I need to tell Marketing Cloud which email address I'm gonna use for this segment. Okay. So one of the things that's important to know about identity resolution is that when you end up with the unified individual, that doesn't mean that it unifies all the email addresses that you have about the person and all no. The unified individual is a unique record that you have, and then the contact points are the different emails that you have for the person. So when you're activating a segment, you have to choose what are going to be the contact points that you're going to use. Not only that, in this case, I have multiple points of contacts. I have data from Marketing Cloud, and I have data from my orders for example, that have email addresses. So in this screen, I have to choose what is a priority that I want to use when sending the email address. Do I want to use the email address if I have a match in Marketing Cloud first? Yes, I want to use that because maybe that's the one I want to use that they are subscribed. But if not, maybe I want to use the one from the orders. So it's very important to choose the contact points for activation. SMS doesn't show up enabled because I didn't map my contact point phone number or contact point phone in my mapping, so I can't choose it. But I did map contact point email, in my mapping, so I'm gonna be able to choose it. And then, as I was saying, is additional attributes I can incorporate in my segment. So this is gonna be sent additional attributes to Marketing Cloud. So in this case, it's gonna say, okay, for now, I'm gonna send you a column called Unified Individual ID and a column called email address. But do you want to add more attributes? And I say yes, because maybe I'm making an email that's like an email for valued members. Okay, so I'm gonna click on Add Attributes, and I'm gonna say, you know what? I want to send the first name of a person, so I can do some personalization. And then I want to send related attributes, and I want to send the sales order. And I want to send, for example, the loyalty points accrued in that order. Okay. Let's say I want to do that because I want to tell the person, remember my segment is people that bought more than $50 in camping. Okay. So I want to send an email perhaps that says, hey, you accrued 500 points in your last order. Okay. So all I'm doing in my activation, like I said, is I'm choosing my activation target, and then I'm choosing the contact points that I'm going to use. And then I'm choosing what attributes I'm going to send in that activation, okay, which is nice. And the last thing I can do is I can filter. So for example, even though I have a segment that already filters my data, let's say that I want to say, you know what, don't send any orders, don't send anything to the activation if they bought at a particular store. So let's say they bought at the Florida store. Okay, so I can say don't send anyone if I bought at the Florida store, for example. Okay, so it's kind of nice because it allows me to add a little more granularity to my activation. I can have a segment that is more general, like everyone who bought $50, but maybe for email, I don't want to send to people if I bought in the Florida store because I don't know, they're mad about it, whatever. So I can do that at the activation level, which is nice. And then the other thing I can do is because basically sales orders is a one-to-many relationship. So I have multiple orders for one person. I have to tell the activation how many orders do I want to pull for that customer. So let's say that customer has more than one order. I gotta tell this screen, I gotta say, okay, sort the orders by total amount, lowest to highest. If you have more than one, I want them sorted this way in my activation. And you know what? I want to bring the top 3 orders. And here's a small limitation on Data Cloud, I think. Imagine if I want to bring all the products, for example, that the person bought in an order. Well, this dropdown is only limits to 5, okay? So that's kind of like a known limitation, maybe change in the future. So the amount of items that I can bring for a related entity is 5, so I will be able to bring up to 5 orders. Now, you shouldn't use really Data Cloud to say, oh, what if I want to send a order confirmation email with that? You shouldn't really do that. So in this case, I mean, most of the scenarios where you will want to bring all the orders or all the products, for an order is not going to be very common, but I think 5 is a very low number. Maybe they should bring it up to 20 or whatnot. So anyway, like I said, I have my segment, I have my activation target, I have my activation. My activation, I choose the contact points that I'm going to include in my activation and the priority. And I choose any additional attributes. In this case, the points accrued and the first name. I click next. I put the name, so I can say to SFMC, and I'm gonna do a full refresh. Okay, so every time my segment publishes, refresh entire activation, overwrite everything. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I never chose how often I want to activate this, from what day to day, nothing. Why is that? Because that is dependent on the segment, not on the activation. If you remember, when I create a segment, I had to choose a publishing schedule. So the activation is going to be depending on the publishing schedule to send that data to the destination. When I click on save, I have my activation done. I can see it here. And it shows me a history of the activation. How many people were accepted, rejected. So this is a good also way to do quality assurance. Like if in my segment I have 100 people and in my activation I have 50, I can troubleshoot why that happens. If I have invalid email addresses or whatnot, I can kind of like try to validate that. So in my segment, the last thing I will have to do is I could publish now. And that's it. Now, because I published my segment, this activation is going to start publishing. So in this related screen, I'm going to start seeing like updates on this publish history. I'm going to show you an example of one that is finished because it takes like 10-15 minutes to publish it, to the whole process. So we might not have time, but this one, the segment 2, in this one I had so in my segment I had give me everyone with total amount greater than 20 that bought camping gear and the birthdays in December. So I had 12 people that qualifies to that. So, and then the activation basically, let me see if I can edit. The activation was sending loyalty points accrued, the product name of the products that were bought. Okay. So, and then if you can see here in the activation history, I have 12 people in my segment. So let me see if I can show you here. In related, I can see activations, the publishing history, right? For the activation. So I have the activation is called test sales order activation to SFMC. I have 12 in my segment and 12 were sent. Publish type full refresh and last published status successful. So how does that look like in Marketing Cloud? You may ask. In Marketing Cloud, we went to Contact Builder. We went to Data Extensions, Share Items, Share Data Extensions. Very important to know the history of a name of Salesforce Data Cloud. Because if you don't know that this platform used to be called Customer 360 Audiences, you may never find this folder unless you're watching this video. So, Customer 360 segments, and then the name of your segment is gonna be the one that is gonna have a folder in it. So my segment was called Test Sales, or the name of the activation, Test Sales Orders Activation, is gonna be the name of a folder. Test Sales Order Activation, and then it creates a data extension with the name. And then if you go into record, as you can see, I have the subscriber key, which is basically the customer ID that I chose, the email address of a person, and in the sales order, I said I wanted to put loyalty points accrued and the collection of products only with the name. It gives me a JSON object, beautiful JSON object with the points accrued, the amount. Let's look at the activation real quick so we can see. So I chose that I wanted the total amount on the order, the loyalty points accrued, and for each product on that order, I want the product name. And that's what I have here. The loyalty points accrued, the total amount, and for each product, the product name for my segment. So and I can use this JSON object to personalize my email, to do things. Now with this extension, I can connect it to Contact Builder. I can put in Journey Builder to create a journey. I can do a lot of stuff. But the only thing that the activation is, it puts the data on the data extension, ready to send. Okay. It's a sendable data extension, as you can see, everything ready, nice to send. If we go to our previous segment that we just created, I don't know if it's gonna be what the history is, but we can try to see. Yeah, it's still publishing. So first thing is to finish publishing. Once it finishes publishing, it's gonna start the activation process. And then you're gonna start seeing history here. Okay. So that's pretty much it in terms of creating segments and activation. Like I say, it's like, as you could probably tell by now, it's very important to have this data mapping done correctly and knowing your data model, because this part, creating segments and activations, is not that complicated. But if you don't have correctly mapped entities, you're gonna start seeing different counts, in your segments and whatnot. So it can get quite complicated. So let's go back to our presentation. So last few things to kind of wrap up before any questions. I leave you here a couple of articles. Again, very important, the data model, like I was saying. There is a Trailhead module on segmentation and activation. There is a article of how to use calculated insights in segments. Highly recommend the Data Cloud Decoded playlist from Salesforce developers. They do a great job at summarizing a lot of the features in Data Cloud. And then the Data Cloud Consultant Trail Mix, for those of you who are thinking about taking the Data Cloud certification, it's a really great resource. So in part 4, we're gonna have someone at Salesforce, from Salesforce, hopefully, like presenting some more advanced features on Data Cloud, like AI power features and whatnot. And then maybe I think we might have opportunities to do more sessions. I think discoveries could be another good one. So with that, we have a couple minutes. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Tom, I don't know if you have any questions. You can put in the chat.
Yeah, I think this is great. Thank you so much, Pato, for walking us through this. Again, I think you make it pretty simple, pretty easy to understand. One question that I thought of as you were kind of going through this, I understand that this likely varies greatly, but maybe more interested to know if you have a preference, right? So as you were kind of walking through the segmentation elements, you talked, a little bit about how granular you could get, exclude, people from Florida, for instance, or something along those lines. Would you recommend, I guess, that that segmentation, I guess, occurs in doubt, or is it easier on a marketer, maybe, for instance, to kind of pull as much of that information over as possible, and then as they run into use cases where they have to exclude a certain territory, for instance, or something along those lines, you do that segmentation in Marketing Cloud off of the new data extension that's created. Do you have a preference there? Is there any advantages, disadvantages to kind of doing it in one place versus the other?
Well, great question. Great question. I have a preference and I have a recommendation. I don't know if I have a preference, actually. I'm going to start with a recommendation. My recommendation is that it's important to understand the domain of the different platforms that you have and who's going to use them and for what purpose. In what sense? It's important to know if you're going to want to have the marketing team deploying campaigns and have the segments available to just deploy campaigns versus I want to have my data model for marketing automation in marketing cloud, and I want to be able to segment it. I think it's important to decide the composition of your team and then who's going to do what with these platforms. And I think it's important to decide and discuss what are these each platforms are going to be used for. Maybe Sales Cloud, because you could also do segmentation in Sales Cloud. You could do like reports in Sales Cloud. You could do campaigns in Sales Cloud and segment that. So it's important to also discuss what are these tools are being used for. For example, you could use Marketing Cloud personalization, right, to do product recommendations. But if you have Commerce Cloud or another e-commerce platform, you can also do product recommendations there. So which ones do you use? So it's very important to decide that. My preference, I think, is I will use Data Cloud as the one-stop shop for all segmentation needs. And then Marketing Cloud is just an activation channel. You do minimum segmentation there. You just segment if you want, but then that will be, I think, my preference. Because again, that you're kind of like putting less responsibility on Salesforce Marketing Cloud, creating less dependency in a way. If in the future you want to use a different marketing automation tool or whatnot, you have less dependency there. Sure. But I could be persuaded otherwise as well. I think it depends on the scenario and the teams. Good question.
No, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we should close out here. If you would love to hear, ask questions or just have conversations about different topics, you can join our Slack channel. We have different members of the community there. You can ask, different things and whatnot. So it's kind of nice. And then we also would love your ideas. If you want to see other type of presentation, hear about other products, or if you have ideas that you would like to present yourself, well, we look always for volunteers to present. And Tom and I can help you with preparation, with even giving you feedback about what idea you can present. So even if you're not sure of what to present on, just let us know, or you can scan this QR code and submit the form, and we can help you figure out what kind of presentation you can do. So we're always looking for presentations for presenters, especially in the upcoming year. We had to go kind of filling the agenda for the presenters. So we're always looking for someone to present. So thank you again. Once this is recorded, I'll load it to YouTube, and you'll see all the messages from me. Maybe around between tomorrow and Wednesday, you might have something from me. So I think we're good, Tom. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, no, I think that all sounds great. Thank you, Pato. Thank you, Julie, for the deck and the birthday wish. Appreciate that. And yeah, thanks to all of you for joining, and we look forward to continuing the conversation here around Data Cloud specifically, at least for the next month, and go from there. So thanks all.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. Bye.
Happy birthday, Tom. Bye.
Thank you.